Welcome to another edition of Trail Runner Nation. My name is Don Freeman.
And I'm Scott Warr, and today we're going to explore the topic that sits at the core of every runner's journey, finding the balance between durability and stamina. As we lace up our shoes and hit the trails, it's not just about how far we can go, but how we get there. Joining us today is our regular guest, Coach Ian Sharman. He's a seasoned ultra runner and marathoner and owner of Sharman Ultra. Today, Ian is going to shed some light on the intricate dance between pushing our limits and preserving our bodies, ensuring our running adventures are not just fleeting moments, but lifelong journeys. Ian, thanks for joining us.
Great to be back, guys. And you didn't make up some stuff about me this time. I was hoping there'd be some Ian ran on the moon, or Ian has this record that I don't have, or something like that.
I forgot about that. Dang it. I need to make a note of that for next time, Ian. Sorry about that.
So shall I define what we're talking about here to actually make sense to people?
Yeah, a lot of people, let's pull back the curtain, Freeman. People often ask us, where do you come up with the ideas for your podcast? Well, in this case, Ian just sent us a text and said, hey, I have an idea, durability versus stamina. And both Don and I said, sounds like a great topic. And that's really about all the preparation Don and I have done for this episode.
I told Scott, I said, you had me at Dura. I was ready. I want to talk to Ian about this. So I'm curious, and I'm going to lean forward and listen. And I know I'm going to come away with a different concept than I walked in with. So I'm ready to go.
Yeah. So I think.
Can I explain why I thought of this topic?
Yes, Go ahead.
I mean, the gist of it really was I was listening to a podcast. It's mainly about cycling and things like that. It's called The Real Science of Sport with a professor called Ross Tucker from South Africa. And he was discussing how the idea of durability is really important, and particularly for cyclists, because something like the Tour de France, they have all these surges. So it's not just how fast can you go for 2 minutes or how fast can you go up a certain gradient. All the people in the Tour de France are really fit. But the ones who are the champions are the ones who, after they've done 4 hours of riding, after 12 days of the tour, can still do that extra little surge for a 1 hour climb or whatever it might be. And they have to do that often multiple times through the same race. And so they're getting fatigued as they do that. And so he was pointing out this idea of how durable you are, like how hard you can still go once you've already fatigued yourself, how close that is to your maximum. So if we say at the start line, they could all do the same climb in a similar time. What is that like if it's the end of the race stage? And this just was a very fascinating idea, because it really brings out a core concept for ultra running in particular, and even more so in our sport, because we get a lot of muscle damage. Think about someone starting a 100-miler, they feel fresh, they're bouncing around, they can easily go faster, and then look at them at mile 80, and it's not quite the same. They're way below that maximum capacity they had at the start. So if I just define what these things are, I think we can get into it pretty well there. So stamina is the umbrella term here. It's basically fatigue resistance. It's how much you can keep going and sustaining a given effort until you blow up. So if we think of road running, that's, can you go even paced in a marathon? In trails, of course, things are varying a lot more, and that's where this extra durability matters more. But then durability is the ability to withstand accumulated effects of fatigue and produce as close to the initial best that you have, despite that fatigue later on. So if you have multiple hills, multiple mountains, running versus hiking during the race, how much of that can you keep doing near the end? It actually kind of comes back to something I've said to you guys multiple times, which is ultras are about how fast your slowest mile is, not how fast your fastest mile is. But really, that's saying, how durable are you? How much do you fade during the race? And there's, of course, multiple elements to that. One of them is fitness and things you can do to improve it. But a lot of it's to do with your pacing as well. That'll make a big difference to how crashed you are near the end.
So just to help further define this for me, if I'm in a trail race, and it has several climbs in it, 3 big ones, what would it be? Stamina?
Are you thinking of a specific race, Don?
I'm thinking of this. I have 3 aid stations in mind. Yes, as what is it? Stamina or durability? As I go and take a climb and then use the downhill to recover and then take another climb. Am I working with stamina there or durability as I'm taking each one of those inclines?
Well, effectively, durability is an element of stamina, but it's kind of a more relevant thing than just saying how long can you sustain something for. Because in an ultra, of course, you're going to fade a bit. You're going to have a lot of muscle damage after 10 or 20 or 30 hours. but it's about how much you're losing that. So stamina is, could you do one climb as fast as you can and keep an even pace, and then that's the end of the race. But then the element we're looking at is if there's 3 climbs, like you just described, how much slower are you going on the third one versus the first one? So, of course, if you go out too hard, you're naturally going to slow down. If you go something above what is sustainable, so that is both stamina and durability, if you just go at a pace that is an effort level that isn't something you're capable of doing, then maybe that's fine for the first climb, but you're exhausted for the other ones anyway. But what we're thinking about is if you've judged it well, which is a very difficult skill, one of the biggest skills we're looking for in ultra running, how much do you slow down then? And that's your durability. And so you affect that by getting better at pacing, more experienced, getting better at working on the specifics of that race. If you're training for mountain races and you're running on flat terrain, you're going to be less durable on those mountains than someone who's trained on exactly what the muscles and the body's going to go through. So there's a lot of different elements to it, but I just thought it was a very helpful way of thinking about what will actually cause you to slow down versus just get fitter and that's it.
So there's 2 things that I'm thinking right now. One is the old saying that the person who wins one of these long events is the person that slows down the least. So has that stamina. If you're talking a 50-mile or 100-mile race, who slows down the least is going to have the better race. And the other part is something that Don's taught me over the years. At the beginning of a run or the beginning of a race, is this pace and how I'm feeling right now, if can I picture myself at the end of the run or end of the race doing the same pace with the same energy? If I can't, then I better slow down. So it's managing expectations, it's managing the fatigue and that sort of thing. Is that what you're saying, Ian?
Basically, yeah, I would just slightly adjust that, which is that, of course, if you're doing something later in the race at the same pace, it will be a higher effort because you're tired, you'll have muscle damage. But exactly the way you described it there, which is if you're doing a climb at mile 1, how would you be doing that climb at mile 90 of a 100-miler or mile 27 of a 50K? So it's trying to work out and ask yourself for your pacing, does this feel appropriate based on things I've gone through in previous races, in previous training, and trying to get that pacing right. But I find that's actually a very good thing you can think about in the moment. It's one thing to say you should pace sustainably. It's another thing to say, could you do this near the end? And of course, if you've not done that distance before, you don't know. So it's better to be too cautious anyway. But the more experience you get, the more races, the more long runs you do, particularly if you've done that same race before, then you've got a much better idea about how did this hill feel last time based on how things went later in the race. Was that appropriate or not? And then, of course, all these other variables are changing, like you might be fitter or less fit or more experienced or better at hills, or it's a hot day, cold day. So you've got to factor all of that in as well. But the simple question is, if I'm doing an effort level now, is that how I'd be doing things later? Could I still run this section if it were near the end, or should I be hiking it, for example? That's probably the biggest decision people have to make at any moment on a climb. And if you're thinking, no, there's no way I'd be running this near the end, then maybe you should be at least hiking more of it now. Not necessarily all of it, because of course you're fresh, but you're trying to minimize how much you wear yourself down as well.
So you just opened up another can of worms there, Ian. I don't know if you did that on purpose, but at least it did in my mind. My mind is crawling with worms right now. This is not just a physical thing. This durability and stamina thing is not just physical, but it's also mental, psychological. There's some calculation, some mental calculation that goes into this, as well as the physical preparation for it.
Oh, undoubtedly. And like a lot of the topics that I discussed with you guys, it quickly broadens into, well, this is everything about ultra running. It's not just this one thing and it's a discrete thing that you can work on, but definitely the mental side. So we're not just talking about how hard you're pushing early on and how that mentally fatigues you, and are you willing to keep pushing that later on. Also think about how motivated you are, and is this an important enough race that you're really going to dig in? And as you guys have said a million times on the podcast, of course, this is a sport that's mainly mental. So we're talking about physical things here, but equally the mental side is going to matter as much when you're on that final climb. Do you want to push as hard as you can at that point, or have you kind of given in? Are you feeling demoralized, or you're not going to get the time or the position you wanted, so you stop caring? All of that comes into as well. So it's one big mix of variables, but we're trying to isolate just the idea of how does the durability affect that? because all those other things we could go down rabbit holes for hours and hours, but they are 100% related.
Boy, so many thoughts are going through my mind as you talk about the mental side. If you're going to do something for a long time, you don't want to make it so difficult that you can't see yourself doing it for a long time. It's hard to do something hard for 100 miles or 50 miles or for 4 hours, whatever it might be. What I hear you talking about is keeping the experience enjoyable, keeping it reasonable within your limits. So to bury yourself early can set yourself up for just a psychological or emotional defeat. You need to stay happy. You need to find the right that sweet spot of, I could do this all day. I'm built for this. I feel good about this. This is my day. You need to go through the entire race feeling like that. I'm speculating. I'm just talking, not speaking for you. But if you start doing things hard where you're dying to just finish the top of the climb, that's not a very positive place to be. That leaves a lot of race in front of you with not a good experience at the moment.
No doubt. And I think part of that is just making sure that you get better and better at being able to judge that. Because if you're newer to it or it's something you've not done before, you don't know what is sustainable. So it's very difficult to work that out. But if we look at a race like Western States or UTMB, where there's a very fast elite field, there'll be a lot of people trying to stay in and around the lead. Particularly UTMB, you get a whole load of people at like 10, 20K who you've never heard of. And they're around the leaders or ahead of the leaders. And then at the end of the race, you've realized they've DNF'd or they finished 10 hours back or something like that because they've gone off too hard. So when you add the competitive element, there is an extra bit of risk of, well, how hard can I afford to push, given there's a lot on the line today, and I know my competitors are super fit too. But even there, in these really long races, you're not going to win the race in the first 10 miles. There's no way that you can just say, well, I'm in the lead now. This is all I need to do. There's no prize for getting a certain position at earlier aid stations. All that matters is how well you do the entirety of it. And that's where the durability comes in, is how well can you do the end bit. And so giving up maybe a bit of time and a bit of effort early on to save yourself for later should make a massive difference in terms of running a faster time. And then the other thing that makes a really big difference for everyone mentally is if you're catching people versus you're being caught, it's much easier to push yourself because you just feel way better. And it's not schadenfreude of, haha, you look bad and I look great. It's more just, well, I feel positive because I'm able to chase people down, and that's a good thing, and that feels better.
Yeah, I made a lot of good decisions because of that. And when you get past, you are definitely thinking, I made some poor decisions. And that's a heavy load to carry through a race. You've watched a lot of races and won a lot of races, Ian. Do you see this happen often where someone takes a lead and holds it for the entire race? Or is there a great deal of success of just kind of lying back and watching the field and taking it in and staying consistent until the finish?
It depends on how competitive it is. You don't tend to see a really competitive race where someone starts off in the lead and goes the whole way. Usually there's someone who's misjudged that and they're a bit too fast, and then they pay for it later. But it certainly happens in a less competitive race, because if you've got Courtney Dauwalter versus a load of mid-pack people, she's going to be in the lead from the first step, and she should be. It doesn't mean she's going too hard. But generally in a more competitive race, that's why there's a lot of interest in the early stages of, oh, is this person going to be the breakthrough star? And it's like, who knows? We're 10% through the race. That is kind of meaningless.
Yeah.
I'm thinking back, there used to be a commercial with Robert Conrad, I think his name was. And it was when Duracell batteries first came out. And he had a leather jacket, and he'd take a Duracell battery and put on his shoulder and say, knock it off, I dare you. And it was a commercial that was trying to portray or trying to communicate the durability and stamina of the Duracell battery.
Was it in color, Scott? Was that in color, that commercial?
It was in color.
Okay.
Technicolor, as a matter of fact. Ian, my question for you is, okay, I want to be more durable. I want to be able to sustain my efforts throughout a long run or a race. How do I do that? How do I prepare myself physically? Let's talk about the physical part first. We've talked a lot about the mental. Let's talk about the physical part. How do I become a physical, durable machine that can have stamina?
Well, other than the basics, which are you need to train over long periods of time to gain the fitness, you need to have enough mileage, etc. I'd say that the key thing here is the specificity of your training. If you're going to be doing a hilly race that involves 3,000 feet climbs and all you can train on is a 500-foot climb, it's going to be much harder to mimic what your body goes through. So therefore, it's going to be newer on race day. So anything that you're doing that isn't what your body's used to is going to weigh you down quicker. So that could include going too fast. It could include doing terrain you're not used to. It could include, a good example. One of the first races I did was the Marathon des Sables. So it's running across the Sahara Desert on sand. I was training in the center of London, no sand there. So I was able to do certain elements of that, but the sand was going to wear me down a lot quicker than if I could have trained on some sand, because my muscles would be used to it. The extra bit of effort you have to put through in the lower leg, just the feeling of what that's like and getting better at pacing it. In fact, at that particular race, you see these elite guys living in places like Morocco and Jordan, who they just had a slightly different way of running on the sand. Because they practiced it, they had a slightly more flat-footed way of running to spread the load compared to how other people were running who weren't used to it. So that specificity means they were going to fatigue themselves less from that harder element because they're used to it. So if there's just one word as an answer to that, is it's specificity. Whatever you're going to have in the race, heat, cold, mountains, roads, mud, whatever it may be, you've got to make sure you can get your body ready for that. Otherwise, those elements are going to be things that redline you, and that causes a lot more exhaustion. And actually, just to use the example of mud or snow at the moment, given we're in March, that's the kind of thing that can really exhaust people because they're slipping and sliding a bit. So maybe their major muscles in the legs are fine with it, but all the little stabilization muscles around the core get really fatigued, and then that just means everything feels 10 times harder. So again, if you train on that, you get better at it, and the little muscles and the specific ways that you need to move are not going to be wearing you down as quickly. So that very much is durability, especially if there's only sections like that, like uphills causing you to get tired, or downhills causing you to get more muscle damage because you aren't as used to it, or sections that are muddy or snowy and they exhaust you, and then after that you're just tired. But it's not that much different to just running too hard at a certain point and then you're too tired after that. It's just that's a more obvious thing, while these other specific things are often actually quite difficult to train for anyway, particularly if you don't have that terrain or that weather where you live. Like me being in London, I didn't have 120 degrees plus sand to train on. So you have to try and mimic elements of that as well as you can, but you know that it's not going to be as good as someone who can really have that on their doorstep.
As you're talking about this, I'm thinking, I have one of my Achilles heel in running long distances is I have to deal with cramps, leg cramps. And I can almost dial it into an exact clock. I could set my watch to when I have these leg cramps. It's usually about hour 4. And I've been trying for the longest time. I was trying, okay, maybe I'm not using electrolyte supplements enough, or S caps, or maybe I'm not fueling right, or maybe, all these different solutions. And I was talking, Don, you could probably remember, it was after we concluded a episode that we were recording, and I was asking somebody, I can't remember who it was. I said, what about cramping? And I kind of told him my situation. And I said, what do you recommend for that? And he said, you need to train more. You need to be in shape. You're not training enough for the speeds that you're going, or the effort level that you're going. Sure, you can go out and you can go hard and maybe not feel like you're going hard for 4 hours, but your muscles have not been trained for that. The specificity that you're talking about, they're not trained well enough. He says you just need to be trained more, and then
And
your
cramping is,
muscles will be ready.
yeah, cramping in particular is something where people think, oh, if I just have some salts or something, that'll fix it.
Right.
But the issue, or at least the majority of the issue, is not a lack of something in the body. It's a safety mechanism for the body to stop you pushing yourself too hard. Because think about it, when it's the Olympics or UTMB or something where someone's career, and it really means a lot to them, is on the line, then you would have people who kill themselves. If you could push your body to the absolute limit without there being some safety mechanisms, then you would just have people who die. When you think about it, it's like obvious. Of course, there's a lot of people who would give anything, and they're trying to push as hard as they can. So the mind and the body have to just hold you back a little bit from that edge of what might cause you to overheat, or to have worked so hard that it somehow kills you, overworks the heart, something like that. So cramping is mainly a safety mechanism. And it's partly the brain engaging this to slow you down. And so that's why people often say, oh, well, I had some salts and I felt better. Like, yeah, you also walked, didn't you? You stopped. And then the body
Exactly.
was feeling a bit easier. And that's probably the main thing that helped it. And so, yes, getting fitter will help with that a lot. But a lot of people don't realize that cramping and even just the kind of extreme fatigue you get, say, when you get hot, is mainly the body telling you, whoa, we need to slow down a bit here, or you might go over the edge and do something that's irreversible. And of course, you can improve that with training, not just getting fitter, but you can also improve the brain's ability to allow you closer to that edge. So this is, as we've discussed on this before, the central governor theory, that it's there to try and stop you going right over that edge. But you can train it to allow you to push a bit harder, because you do a race and it doesn't kill you. And the brain's able to understand from that was okay. And maybe it can let the reins a little bit looser for next time so that you get a little bit better.
Yeah, you've got to give your brain an opportunity to see that it's going to be okay, right? It has a number of tools that it can use to slow you down. It can cramp you. It can make you nauseous. It can create negative chatter in your brain. It can cause all kinds of things to discourage you from continuing. But by practicing it and seeing that you can get through it, just like anything with an experience, that we can let it out a little bit further, just like you said. Now, Scott, I think you softened the story a little bit. I think what you were speaking about was a podcast with Brad Kearns from the Be Rad podcast, as we borrowed him, and he's a great triathlete, and has a great podcast and a great career. And I think he said, Scott, you're not in shape. Get in shape, and that won't happen.
He was a little more blunt, and I'm glad that we weren't recording, because I was thinking he was going to tell me you need to be balancing your electrolytes and your hydration, and if you do that properly, you'll be able to sail through there. And all he said was, "You're not in shape."
Yeah, Ian.
And the thing here, though, is it's not like if you get in better shape, it won't happen. It just raises the threshold where it'll happen.
Yeah, good point. So if you're training one of your athletes, Ian, and you're trying to make them have more stamina and be more durable, is there a different strategy that you use to help them become more durable versus having more stamina? Or since stamina is an umbrella term,
is having more stamina. It's just an element of stamina. But what I'm trying to do is to minimize how much they slow down. So probably the biggest thing I'm doing, especially in the final few weeks, is just saying to them, don't go off too fast. I say that every day of the week, because even when I say it after the race, they go, you know what you said? And I agreed. And then I went off. So it's not an easy thing to do. We're on the start line. We're excited. There's the adrenaline. People zoom off, and that gives us a false sense of maybe we think we're going slow enough, but we're still going 10% too hard. So it's very easy to do that. I had a marathon a few years ago, and a friend of mine, we were on the start line, and we said to each other, okay, let's not be too aggressive. And then it's 3, 2, 1, go. And we'd even said what mile split we expected to do the first mile. We both ran it 20 seconds quicker than that. And at the 1 mile point, I'm like, oops, that took me 6 minutes to make a mistake there. But at least you can correct it the earlier you realize that. And it felt easy. That's the point, because it's early in the race. But probably the biggest thing I'm talking to people about is hold yourself back. Think about how this is going to affect you several hours down the line. In particular, think about how other races have gone. So some people I'm coaching always go off too fast. So for them, I'm really trying to make them focus on go slower than you think you have to. So work out what you think is right based on your other times, and then go a little bit easier than that. And occasionally, probably about 5% of people I coach or less, they're the people who are always too cautious. And in their case, I'll say, no, you don't need to hold yourself back quite that much. You finish the race with loads left in the tank. That's great. And it's actually a lot easier to come from that angle, because you're already judging things well, and you can just give yourself a little bit more risk. It's much harder to fix, did you go off too fast? Because was it 1% too fast or 10% too fast? Or was it okay on the flat, but it was a bit too much on the hill? But what I'm trying to make them think about is, has your effort level changed? Does it feel sustainable for this kind of race based on other similar races and how those have gone for you? And in particular, to make them think in the moment, what can I change? And probably the single biggest thing, particularly for an ultra on trails, is should I be hiking or should I be running? And so I know you guys will love the fact that I bring this back to power hiking. It is such a key topic, not with a weight vest because it's in a race, but we're talking about when, say, on a hill, should you drop to a power hike? And a question I often get as well is, well, I know what I did in my 100K, and the 100 mile is similar terrain. What's the difference in effort? Because they're both really long. And so part of that would be, well, how we faring at the end of the 100K. If you weren't fading, then that's great. And you're probably very close to a 100-mile effort. If you blew up at 50K, then you probably need to be more cautious than that and be extra careful, given it's got to last even longer. But the main thing I'm getting them to ask and trying to point out the difference between different ultra distances is when you're going up a hill, at what effort level do you drop into a power hike? And so we make sure we practice that in training. And so they're used to it, and both the switching to and from hiking and running. So they're thinking about the effort, and of course, they're improving the physical ability to hike. But it's mainly just making sure that they can, on a climb, choose to hike before they have to. And that they're putting that in the context of how other races have gone, how long the hills are, if they've done this particular race before, mistakes they made, and then trying to correct that. But the simplest thing is really just hike before you need to. And it's much better to hike too much in the first half because you've got a bit left in the tank and you will probably still slow down, but less, versus if you try and run a bit too much of the hills or run too much of it if it's a flatter race, and then your durability is down because you've worn yourself down more. So it isn't just the overall stamina, it's particularly how worn down are you.
And that's what I think is the key to managing a race and being successful. And what separates a veteran from someone that's on their journey to become a veteran. So a veteran, I think, has the ability to forecast, to be able to see where I'm at now and what's it going to look like at mile, 25%. What do I look at 50% of this race? Can I still do this at 75%? How do I relate that to where I am right now? And with trail running, what's ahead of me? Are the big 3 climbs that I'm talking about in the middle of the race, at the beginning of the race? Should I use some of that energy and effort now? And, being able to forecast what vehicle you're in, what you brought. And when I say vehicle, have you done training that is specific to that race? Are you at your top fitness level? Do you have any injuries you're just trying to avoid? When do you apply that type of effort into that part of the race? Being able to forecast and make decisions on the fly, and being able to adapt to whatever's coming at you. I didn't think it was going to be this hot today. What happened to the clouds? I thought, there was supposed to be a sunny day. Here I'm in rain. How does that change my effort, my race, my footing, everything that goes along with it? So being able to forecast is a veteran move.
Yes. Yeah. And actually, this is one of the reasons I think that 100 milers work quite well for me personally versus shorter ultras, because I'm not a super fast runner, particularly uphill. For the times I run in an ultra, I'm worse than other people who do that same time uphill. I can hike well, but I don't have a massive engine for running uphill. But I think that there has actually been an advantage in the 100 milers because a lot of people overestimate how much of the race they can run. And so they exhaust themselves more. And if I'm doing, say, a Western States or a Leadville, typically about 25 miles of that out of 100 is going to be power hiking. But if you're doing that and the hiking is fast and you're doing it and it then saves your legs, that's the durability element. It saves your legs for later. So you can still be running the flats, running the easy bits. Then that's a really good trade-off. While someone who maybe is thinking, well, I can just run this climb and I can run the next climb, but can they run all the climbs? And is it still causing them to slow down 10%, 20%, 100%, sat by the side of it puking or something like that? But I actually think that this is something where I could see how this idea really played out in things I'd done without realizing it. I had to hike more because I just wasn't good enough at running, but it's actually a really good way for minimizing that slowdown later on. And a good analogy here is, you mentioned a battery in Duracell, probably a car battery even more so. So in an electric car, it'll tell you what the range is. But if you drive faster, you accelerate hard, that'll shoot the range down much quicker. So same with ultra running. If you are pushing a bit too hard on a climb, or you're doing a section that you haven't trained for specifically and it wears you down a bit quicker, maybe your battery would have lasted all the way to 100 miles if you judge it perfectly. But you go a bit too hard a couple of times and it depletes the battery too fast to be sustainable. And then you end up running out of steam before the end.
Ooh, good analogy. Yeah.
Yeah. Hey, I want to retell a story we talk about golden nuggets. This is a golden boulder that Don and I learned from a good friend of ours who's been on the podcast a number of times, Warren Pohl, a former Brit, not former, a fellow Brit, Ian, and he told us about his strategy of he was always blowing up because he was going out of the start too fast, and he was racing UTMB one year, and at UTMB, allegedly, there is the mayor of Chamonix follows the group in a car out of the starting gate, and his strategy was to run with the mayor. So he wasn't going to go out too fast. He had to be with right there with the mayor. The car can't go any faster than the slowest runner. And that was his strategy to make sure he was going slow early on. And so whenever I do races, I have that mantra going through my head as the adrenaline is pumping through up. They have the loud music blaring and the announcers going, and he's getting people pumped up, and you just feel this adrenaline. And if you're not going for the win, so this may not apply to you, Ian, but for the rest of us, go out with the end of the pack. Be the last person through the starting arch. And that will kind of ease your mind, ease the pressure to be up with someone, especially if it's like a single track start where you're in a big conga line. Be the back of the conga line and have that help play to your advantage.
Yeah, but Scott, how am I going to get my best time ever if I don't go out fast?
Because as Ian just taught us, you never win a race, you never set a PR in the first 10 miles of a race.
Got it. Okay.
Unless the race is 10 miles.
But that's showing you the whole point of what I was saying, which is there's not much of a penalty for going too slow in a really long race early on, but there's a big penalty for going too fast. So again, if you think of your car battery, if you go a bit too slow and it's saying you can do 300 miles and you go at such an efficiency that it could be 320, great, you finish the race with 20 miles left, or you finish the distance you're going with 20 miles still in the tank, but you've not really lost much time from being a little bit conservative. But I actually had a friend who did exactly that at UTMB for a slightly different reason. It's mainly because they start queuing up 3 hours before, and she didn't want to do that. So she just went right at the back 5 minutes before. And so she took her 10 minutes or something to cross the start line. And then she was in all the congestion for the first couple of climbs. So 20, 30, 40 kilometers into the race, she's still being held back by the fact there's loads of people in the way. But she ended up being 15th woman at the end, because maybe she lost, let's say, an hour in the first few hours compared to if she'd have gone off with no one around her at her comfortable pace. But it avoided going too fast. And then she did the rest of the race really well. And the people who had gone too fast, she reels them in and catches them, because I think she did about a 30-hour race. In 30 hours, what's 1 hour that you lose at the beginning that allows you to feel good for the rest of it, versus you go as quick as you can or maybe a bit too fast early on, and then suddenly you're losing 10 hours at the end because you're death marching and you're sitting at every aid station for an hour. But when she told me that, I actually use that example a lot when I'm trying to explain this to people, particularly for longer ultras, that there's not much of a penalty for going too slow early on. I've had this in races as well. Like when I do Western States, it starts with a 4-mile climb. I think the longest I've ever run nonstop is about 0.2 of a mile before I started hiking. And everyone around me then goes past because they're still running, because it's not super steep, but it's a 4-mile climb in a 100-miler. So I'm asking myself, would I be running this if it's near the end? No. So I'm trying to get the right effort level. And then a whole load of people zoom by. The last couple of times I did it, I had a load of people who just stuck with me. They said, you seem to pace it well, Ian. We're just going to do whatever you do for a few miles. And get a little entourage of people doing that.
One of the other things that Don taught me, that someone taught him, Dana Gard, I think, was the walk run on a hill. And so it's not a steep climb, but a moderate climb. And this really made sense to me one time. Don and I were running with a friend, and it was a long, steady climb. And that one friend ran the whole thing at steady pace, just was not fast, but it was a steady pace. And Don and I both did a walk run, and we could keep up with him. And from a durability standpoint, when we got to the top, we were less fatigued than he was, because he was constantly in that running position, making that leg turnover. And we were giving our muscles that rest from a run. We do that. Go ahead, Don. Maybe you have more information.
No, I just wanted to get in front of Ian because Because not only do you have less physical effort, or at least you're depleting your battery less, you're also conserving your mental or your emotional piece. You're not reaching deep down to really grind to get it done. You're keeping it light and easy and getting to the top, and you're saving that's magic power that you have for later on in the race when you really need that emotional push. So it hasn't been hard all day. You measured your effort. You caught up there with less physical demand, but you kept it light mentally, which is important in a long race. Whether it's an hour long or 24 hours long, you've got to keep fresh and you got to keep it fun all the way through. Because as John Nichols said, to drop some names as we go through, a good running friend around here said, you can't do something hard all day long, and you got to keep it fun.
The only difficulty there, if we go for the tactic of being further back in the field and allowing that to slow you down, is it can frustrate people. Because often in these big races, especially the European ones, that means it's stop-start. So you're going up a climb and you do a step and you stand, and you do a step and you stand. And that's kind of annoying. And so a lot of people try and get ahead of that, but then it's better to be going too slow than too fast. So if you can just get your mind at ease with that and say, this is fine, this is just my warm-up, it's the first couple of climbs, no big deal, and not be trying to prance around people. So it's single track and you're going on the rocks to get around them. And I've seen people do that, and over one 1 hour climb, they're 10 people up, but they're exhausted because they've gone around them really awkwardly, but they're hardly further ahead. And actually related to that in terms of the exhaustion you can get from just pushing a bit too hard. There's a climb next to where my mother-in-law used to live. And I think it was a 800-foot climb in 1.4 miles. And so it was steep enough that it was a challenging one for me to run. And I timed it at the same level of fitness to see if I run all of it, if I do a run-hike combination, or if I hike all of it. And I think it was something like 15 minutes to run all of it. And I was absolutely redlining at the top of complete exhaustion. So if I were in a race, I would have to jog very slowly, catch my breath over a couple of miles, plus that durability would have gone down for any future climbs. If I hike it, I got to the top and I felt pretty good, like almost perfect, but I was only 1 minute slower. And then if I hiked all of it, I was only another 2 minutes slower, and it was that much easier. In fact, in some ways, the run hike was a bit easier than pure hiking, because when you're just trying to go all out hiking, no matter what the gradient, that can get quite tough. And it's also the same muscle use the whole way. But I was amazed that running all of it, because you get fatigued, so your running isn't super quick once you get tired, compared to a run hike, was almost the same kind of paces. But the run hike felt so much easier. And so the durability would be massively affected by trying to run too much of that. And I've seen that at places like Western States and Leadville as well, where I have hiked past people who were running uphill because they're just running on the spot. Because in their head, they're thinking, I'm in a race, I've got to run. And I'm thinking, I've got to keep the effort level as sustainable as possible. And especially once they get tired, their running is not very quick.
Yeah, Scott, I think that's one of those golden nuggets that you talk about. That is such an important lesson, and to hear you say it is good. You've run a lot of races. How many ultras and include marathons in that as well? Have you run?
I've done about 130 ultras and about 130 marathons.
So a little experience. And I'm sure that you've probably started some races out too fast, because you learned the lesson like all of us do. And some of them you started out just right, where it was the right pace. You didn't go out too fast. But I'm going to ask you this question. Have you ever ended a race and said, gosh, I should have started faster. I've got so much gas left in the tank. I didn't apply myself completely. Has that ever happened?
Given the number I've done, not all of them were maximum race efforts, A races. So some of them should be feeling like that. That was the whole point. And I was trying to just have a nice even-paced, high-quality run. I like playing a little game with some of my road marathons, which was finishing an exact minute. So I think I've done every minute from 2:32 to 3:11. And some of those were purpose, like, I need to do a 2:43. So let's pace for an even 2:43, but being fitter than that and seeing how it went. So that is actually one of the things I think that really helped me to become a better pacer, because I was seeing the subtle differences of, okay, if I'm running 10 minutes slower than I could, how much easier does that feel? If I'm going at this pace per mile versus 5 seconds a mile difference, how does that feel? And so this is over many, many years, but I was doing it just because of kind of an OCD, let's get all the numbers. But I think it's actually incredibly good practice for getting better at pacing. But if I'm racing, then yeah, I would say there's some that I've finished with a little bit left in the tank, but it's mainly more the mental tank than the physical tank, because there's always something physical you could do more. The
Sure.
weakest link is going to be the brain. It's how hard can you push yourself? And so there's somewhere I would maybe just go, I'm not going to give it everything right at the end. I'm going to just do it reasonably hard. Maybe it's I'm stuck in a position and the guy ahead's too far ahead, the guy behind's too far behind. Can I really be bothered to run 5 minutes quicker for the sake of absolutely destroying myself when it's not going to make that much difference? It's not going to be a PR. So some of them, there's definitely that little bit of mental weakness. But I definitely had a handful of races, not many, where I finished it and thought I got everything perfect for the day. I couldn't have gone any quicker. I couldn't have pushed any harder. I couldn't have had a better build up. But that's happened maybe 3 times out of 260.
Wow. Wow.
Scott, I'm going to jump in front of your question just to tag on to this. So you ran 800 feet, and it was 1.5 miles where your mother-in-law used to live. And you made it, what, in a minute less? Was that the number?
Only 1 minute difference between running every step and trying to do it running as hard as I could, but I soon got fatigued, of course, so it wasn't actually running that fast for most of it, versus a run hike where I just chose based on the gradient what felt right.
And so as you look at these finish times, to be able to improve, just an incremental amount, it could cost you a great deal of effort, of perceived effort. I mean, I don't even know if I have a question here, but this thought, like Scott has worms moving around in his head, mine has somehow disrupted my question. That there's a high cost to try to finish at the peak of your run, and if you back off just a bit, it could be measurably easier mentally.
Well, you've basically done the answer to the question, which is
yes,
you should do that. You should allow for that. But the idea being that often just a slight change in effort makes it way more sustainable. And a really good way of thinking about this is if you compare like a 5K to a 10K to a half marathon to a marathon, in each of those, you're basically doubling. But the pace change for a well-trained athlete is very small. Like the difference between my half marathon and marathon pace is about 10 seconds a mile. So that's almost a rounding error. But if I go in the marathon 10 seconds too hard per mile, I'm going to blow up and I'm going to have a horrible race. So it's a very fine margin there. But it's the same principle on the trails that sometimes maybe, let's say, 30 seconds a mile. It's probably a little bit more because the paces are slower, but something that feels almost like a negligible difference because you're obviously going well within yourself at mile 1 of a 50K of a 100 miler. You're not at maximum effort there. But often just that slight change in going slower will make you last that much longer. So that really is the durability element. I mean, it's stamina in general, but it's how much you're going to get worn down and how much is that going to affect how hard you can push later on in the race.
Ian, you are so good at taking a question that wasn't a question, that was scrambled for sure, and bringing out a very important point. And I just recognize you're brilliant. So thank you for doing that for me.
But you had the answer. I just had to tell you the question.
There you go. It's like Jeopardy. It's kind of like Jeopardy. That's this podcast.
You know what? You should do an episode like that. Rather than asking questions, you should give answers, and then the guests have to tell you in the form of a question what you're talking about.
Deal. Would you like to come on that episode?
That sounds fun.
Okay.
Now I forgot what my question was that I had 15 minutes ago when I raised my hand, Don. And I'm sure it will come back to me, but I had 2. Here's the second one. As you're training your athletes, as you're coaching your athletes, is there a difference in how you help someone train and become more durable and have more stamina as they age?
Good question. I would say usually one of the biggest things that improves this is better pacing, which comes with experience, and also maybe a little bit less of the testosterone fueled 20-something male who goes off too fast every time because they're charging like a bull at the beginning, and then they age a little bit and they're like, oh, I can mellow a bit, plus maybe they're a little bit slower, so they have to allow for that. But I think it's really experience is the main thing that makes a difference there. And the great thing about endurance running is that endurance lasts much longer and fades much slower than power. So if you're a power athlete in a big, powerful kind of sport, like, playing American football or something like that, your maximum ability goes down pretty quickly once you hit your 30s. For endurance runners, our maximum capability of what we physically can do is only going down. There's been various studies, they show maybe about 10% per decade. But I think that was in not trained athletes. And they estimated maybe that for someone who's training hard, maybe you only lose about 5% of your speed for these longer things per decade. So that's not a huge amount when you think about it, compared to a power lifter who's going to lose way more than that in a decade, going between 40 and 50, 50 and 60. But because of that, you can make up for it by being a better runner, because that's only one element of it, of what is the maximum you're capable of doing. If you can just get better at judging things, have a better understanding of your durability, it might be that downhills fatigue you more than uphills. Just having an awareness of that, then you can focus your training on the things you're weaker at, but also you can allow for the fact you've got to be more careful on those things so they don't burn through your energy too quickly. But I think the main thing is, as you get older, you can keep getting better for a long time. We still see people in their 50s doing amazing things, a lot of world records in their 40s. Camille Herron just got some 6-day records in her 40s. Alexander Sorokin, he's in his 40s, the 24-hour, 100-mile, 100K world record holder. You're not going to get that in most sports. You're not getting 40 plus being the best in the world ever.
Mm. And look at Megan Arbogast. How extremely fast she is, and how long she's been able to hang on.
If you've got a 60-year-old NBA player, they're going to look pretty bad compared to a 20-year-old. But a 60-year-old, great aging, experienced, knows exactly what she's doing, ultra runner like Megan, can hold her own with younger, maybe not quite as quick as she was, but she's not massively different to what she was able to do before.
One of the other things that you can work on that can help with this durability situation is something that Don did probably 10, 15 years ago, and that was work on technique to try to reduce the amount of energy that he uses in every step. And he's done a phenomenal job at becoming a more efficient runner so that he can run further and run faster and use less muscle and fatigue. I think that's a really good point.
Well, it's not just the specificity, of course, of the things you're doing, but speed work in general will improve your running economy, so that also is improving your durability. If you're a faster runner, you can go at a slower pace and it's more sustainable for a longer period. So just the quicker you are, the more leeway you have of different paces you can go at in ultra. So you could have Jim Walmsley do an easy 100-miler and probably feel relatively good at the end, while most people couldn't, because they don't have that extra capacity of being so within themselves and so highly trained that they could get away with that. But yeah, there's no doubt that just being faster will flow through. It'll help even more on the road for like, because the running economy is the way you're moving and the road motion is staying the same the whole time. Probably a more similar thing, or a thing you need to do as well as the speed work for the trails, is get used to the type of terrain you'll be on. So if it's technical, if it's muddy, whatever it is, so like I was talking about with those desert athletes who found a different way to run on the sand, what that's effectively doing is improving their running economy. They're burning fewer calories to go at a given pace because they're losing less of it because of the specifics of the terrain.
3 things come to my mind as we're having this discussion. A veteran runner, you're Megan Arbogast, that just seems to always do so well. Great consistency. Of the 3 things that come to mind are veterans can recognize problems. I've been here. I felt that before. I had a cramp start here in my calf. I know what I need to do now before it evolves into something that has me sit on the rock. So recognizing problem, either nutrition or electrolytes or all the many things that we have to measure. And then to the point of the discussion today about forecasting. Well, I know I feel like this now. How am I going to feel in another 2 hours? Can I do this for 4 more hours? What does this look like? Being able to realistically forecast and having enough discipline to pull yourself back. And in some cases, let some people that you're faster than run by you. So you look at that person and you go, I'm not moving that slow, am I? for many of us that might think that person's moving slow. In fact, they're passing me. So apparently I am moving that slow. But being able to forecast how much you have left so you get to the end of the race and you have a little bit in your battery, enough to get back to your car. And then just knowing how to govern a lot of that and being able to, go ahead, Ian.
Well, there's 2 elements of that. So one of them is that with more experience, you get better at judging, okay, I'm pushing a little bit too hard, let's back off, and you can make those decisions. But equally, you get more mature and you can say, okay, no, I can't just keep going at this pace. I am going to blow up. And you can say, that means maybe I have to run slower today than I wanted, but I'm going to do that because that's what my body's telling me I have to do, and I can read my body well enough. So part of it is you get better at being able to do it. And secondly is you get more mature about not just ignoring it and continuing hard anyway.
Right. And my third point was knowing your body, right? Knowing what level of, and being realistic. I am not at my peak fitness. I am at, 75%. And if I'm 75%, I need to approach the race this way so that I can have a positive experience. Because if I go to what I've done in the past, or when I'm at 100%, there's no way I can follow that body. And so I need to be able to bring yourself back. And part of that is being a veteran experience and having discipline to make yourself do that, because it's not easy.
And getting better
And
at letting your ego go,
Right.
which is very much saying, well, okay, I've got to run slower today. I'm not as fit as I'd like to be, or I've just pushed too hard on that hill. Now I'm going to pay for it. But if I ignore this, I'll pay for it a lot more. And just saying that's okay. I'll do what's best for me, and I know how this works. And in particular, when you've got all that experience, you say, well, I know if I don't do this and I ignore this fact that this is going to slow me down, I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. And so I'd rather do the best I can from here and adapt to the new reality than ignore it and then blow up spectacularly and have a horrible race. And my head will be down and everything will feel 10 times harder mentally as well.
And redefine what victory is. A victory might be taking what I have today and getting to the finish line and survive it. Maybe that's the victory. It may not always be a number on a watch or a position in the race, but maybe it is taking this body with what I have today and successfully managing it to the end. That's a victory. And you should, embrace that.
If you want a really big golden nugget here, it would be that older athletes get much, much better at being able to say, okay, well, my aim here was X or Y, but I know that the aim of everything should be to grow and learn. And so you can have outcome goals. You can be aiming to win the race or whatever it may be. But as you get older and more mature, you can get much better at saying, maybe today's not my day. Maybe I'm not as fit as I thought I was, or this guy's just knocking it out of the park. They're going to destroy the course record, and I'm just not capable of running that fast. And not just being a wimp and backing off unnecessarily, but being able to say that this is the aim of today is, yes, it'd be nice to have these outcome goals, but the aim is to do the best race possible. And if you always aim to do that, it's easier to remain motivated and positive. You can also have things go wrong or have a bad day and say, well, okay, what can I do that stops this happening next time? So the value from today is that I learn and it doesn't happen again. But the more you can have that mindset about trying to do a good race and trying to learn and grow and improve, you can do that forever. But you might get slower over the years, but you can keep growing and improving in certain ways. And that has much more meaning than just these outcome-based goals. I mean, we've talked about process of the outcome as well on the podcast before. And as I said, it's like every topic goes into every other topic once we start getting into it. But I think that's a really big one, that one of the most important things to be a good runner, especially for the long term, and to be the best you can be, is to focus on growing and improving versus just times and places and outcomes.
I want everybody to stop the recording or stop listening, rewind to when Ian started that golden nugget, and change your perception or change the way that you're thinking about this. Don't think about running. Think about life. How can I become a better father? How can I be a better mother? How can I be a better brother, sister? How can I be a better teacher? How can I be a better employee?
Podcast partner?
Podcast. I may need to listen to it 3 or 4 times. And then with that point of view, listen to exactly what Ian said. I think that there's more than gold. That may be diamonds. That may be a diamond nugget. A lot of this we've been.
Ian has
a lot of this.
There's just
go ahead, Ian. But I have another thing.
Sometimes people can listen to that and say, that's what losers say. If you're going to be the winner and you'll win at all costs, so you're the best in the world, you can't think like that. But the people who are the best have to think like that. And the big difference there is that they will have the aim of getting the gold medal, getting the win at UTMB or whatever. And that's their aim 6 or 12, or let's say even more months than that, maybe years in advance. And they put the work in that puts them in a position to do that. Then at the race itself, you do the process. And you stop thinking about, am I in the lead? Oh, I've got to go ahead of that guy because that guy might be going too hard and they might drop out. And you see that every time in these big races. But it's not to say that this is a tactic only for people who are second best. This is the tactic for everyone. But it doesn't mean that you don't care about the outcome. And that might be the thing that gets you up every morning to train and to put the work in. And then as you get close to the race, you assess, am I capable of doing that outcome goal? And then in the race, you forget about the outcome goal and you go all in on process until you're near the end of the race. And then you say, okay, can I get that time? Can I get that position? Let's use that as the motivation now. But you've got to get deep into the race. Again, this is durability. You've got to have done the right things to be durable enough to actually push hard at the end and do the best time or the best finish you possibly can. So I think sometimes people can dismiss what I just said and go, that's for losers. But it's not. It's the key thing behind everything that will get you being better or to the best you can be.
And if you follow college basketball, the very successful coach Nick Saban says it's not about the win, it's about the process. If you do the process that we as the coaches are having you do, you don't need to worry about the win. The win is going to take care of itself.
Exactly.
But here's the last little question I have for you, Ian. We've been talking about experience. And that experience of going out, you'll know if you're feeling you're going too fast. If you have the experience, you're going to have the maturity to say, I don't need to pass people here at the beginning. And a lot of that takes time and just going out and doing. But I would bet that by having a coach that is working with you one-on-one could maybe speed up that growth curve, where you can say coach is a outside feedback loop that say, okay, I went out and I did this race and this is the way, and the coach is going to ask the right questions to help you learn about yourself quicker so that your experience becomes more relevant faster. Is that true? Is that why I should hire a coach?
That's what my job is. That's the whole purpose of my job, to help people get better. It's not to tell them, do this, do that, don't think about it. It's to help them think about why things are, again, it's to help them grow. It's not to help them get an outcome. It's to help them grow and learn and be able to deal with things. Because also, I'm not there on their shoulder at mile 50 of a 100-miler to say, you should speed up or you should slow down. I'm teaching them the skills to be able to do that better. And so a lot of that comes from what they've done in the past and their level of experience. And so the newer they are, the more things they have to actually go through for themselves. And I'll often say this, the first time someone does a new distance, I'll tell them, you're going to make mistakes. We're going to talk through everything, but you will make some mistakes. You will not be able to learn from it until you felt what it's actually like in the moment. And I can't tell you that. A book can't tell you that. You have to actually do it and learn by doing to some degree. But hopefully we can speed that learning curve up.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, I've got to think that, at least I want to think, that there's a lot of these lessons you can learn on your own over time if you survive that long. If you keep, if you stay passionate long enough, if you stay healthy long enough, if your life offers you the opportunity to continue to participate long enough. But the coach can help identify some of those things. They've been there, they've watched other people, and they can hand you those lessons so you can apply them while your window of opportunity is open. Things don't stick around forever. You think, yeah, I've got a lot of, I can run this trail until the end of time. Well, if you want to try to hit that peak at your peak, you might need a few lessons handed to you. I think that's an important thing to consider. Longevity and then hitting a peak while you're peaking is important.
And being the fastest you can be is not that important to a lot of runners. But being able to enjoy it, grow, do it for longer, not get injured as they get older, be able to navigate through that, that's the same idea. And so that's what I'm saying. It's not just about, can you get a quicker result? And that's not the only growth you have. It's all these other things, like maybe you kept getting injured. Now you find ways to identify the warning signs. You've got a PT you work with regularly, all these kind of things. And that is growth. So there's a lot of different things that can mean, but it's really just what allows you to get the most out of the sport. And it's a sport that you can do that for a much longer time than most things that are not endurance-based.
One of the things that one of the sayings that I remember hearing early on as I got on the trail was at a race: run your race today. Don't run somebody else's race, the person in front of you or the person you train with, or even the picture of you have of yourself. You don't have to race that person, but run who you are today. Run your race. Just don't go out there with anything else, but staying in tune and staying present to who you are at that moment. Run in the moment, not anywhere else. So run your race today. I think that's a valuable saying that was said earlier. I don't know if I understood it, and maybe I still don't, but I think it's important.
I think Don is dropping some key points in stoicism with us right there about being present, not thinking about the past or the future. Well done, philosopher Freeman. Ian,
if you stay present, Scott, I'm going to continue on with that. Just because staying present is so.
You got more?
No, I'm probably going to repeat what I said, but I think just being where you are at that moment, so critical. Checking in on where am I right now and being good with that, and just listening to the feedback that comes in. I love that part about the sport. How am I right now? How am I now? And not
and
forecasting.
This is still talking about durability. This is still an element of that, because all these different things work together. Your mental side, your physical side, the training you do, how you approach the race, your goals, your every element of how you enjoy the sport is going to come down to improving your ability to understand these concepts. But being there in the moment, that's basically saying, don't just pick a pace and then go hard and then blow up. It's saying, be very good at listening to the signals your body's giving you and learning from the last race you did and the one you did well and the one you did badly. And then you're going to enjoy this one more, as well as probably run it better too.
Yeah. That's good.
Ian, before we wrap this up, this has been a great topic. It's been a great conversation that we all, regardless of where you are in your running, can learn something about. Tell us a little bit about Sharman Ultra. I mean, we mention it a lot every time you come on. Tell us a little bit about your coaching services, who you have coaching for you. It's not just Ian doing all the heavy lifting. He has a team of coaches. Tell us a little bit about Sharman Ultra and what you can offer.
Well, thanks, guys. Yeah, I've been coaching since 2010, 2011. And over the years, I brought on other coaches as well. So it's mainly because I liked experimenting on myself, hence the number of races I've done. It's just little tweaks and what can I learn from it? What can I change? Reading books about things, trying to understand things. I got a personal training certification to try and understand how the body works better. I let that slip because I don't actually do personal training, but it still taught me some key principles. And then over the years, the first coach I had was Ellie Greenwood, pretty much at the height of her fame when she was winning World 100K, Western States, etc. Then Liza Howard came on board. So she particularly deals with a lot of older athletes. She's in her 50s. And so she's just a very caring person. And all her athletes absolutely love her for the attention she gives them. But all of the coaches, they have this ability to empathize and care about the runners and actually be involved in seeing that progress, because that's probably more important than anything else. It's great to know all the knowledge about the science, but that is only one component of being able to coach people well. And then over the years, I've brought on other coaches. I've got Hilary Allen. So she's had an amazing career in mountain running, as well as her near-death experience and coming back from that injury. Addy Bracey literally wrote the book about mental training for ultra running, which is right behind me. Matt Lay, who's been a frequent guest. So he's a sports scientist as well, as being a very fast runner in his day. Annie Hughes is the latest person I brought on. So she's particularly good at 200 milers. But the idea is that we have lots of different kind of skill sets that overlap, and we can coach, any one of us could coach any type of ultra thing. But also because, say, Annie has the 200 mile experience, we're able to pick her brains. We had a discussion a few months ago where we were asking her, well, what is the difference between a 100 miler and a 200 miler in terms of training and races, and trying to get some things that we can then give to our clients as well. And then also Sean Meissner, who used to be the coach for I Run Far back in the day. He came on board about 10 years ago as well.
Yeah, quite a team.
Awesome. You can find more about those coaches and about the services and plans at sharmanultra.com. Hey, Ian, thank you so much for coming on. This has been a fun discussion and a reminder. I think it's been a long time. Here's the checklist that I have on my to-do list is I need to go to that 800 vertical that you said that is by your mother-in-law's place. And I need to experiment like you did. It's been a while. I've done it before, but I need to do it again to remind myself how efficient and fast a walk run versus an all out run. I probably couldn't run the full 800 meters up or whatever, but
And just
I
make sure
think
it's
that's
long
on my
enough
to-do
that
list.
it's not easy to run. Like if it's a 2-minute climb, of course the running is going to be quicker. It needs to be long enough that it's pretty tough to run it. And so then the hiking comes in as being more effective.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. We hope that you learned something from this. We hope you are durable, that you can sustain and be a sustainable runner with lots of stamina so that you can run until the last day that you're on the earth.
And I think, listen,
is that nice to say?
I don't know.
Is that nice to say at the end of a podcast?
We've got an editor, and I'm sure he'll clean that up for us.
You're just getting very philosophical at the end of it.
Oh, and Don just got cut off from the recording.
He's not durable enough. See, his battery died right before the end of the race.
He needed to plug in his battery, didn't he, Ian? Hey, thanks for coming on. We really appreciate you. Every time that you're on, it's a lot of fun. So go out and run.
Ma.
Mas.